Our story begins inside of a base of gray hallways, as Anakin Skywalker, now pronounced Darth Vader, is stepping out onto a balcony, overlooking the snowy plains and the nearby snowy mountains of Hoth. Anakin pulled up a warming mask from under his robe, putting it over his mouth and nose, and he stared out into the whiteness of it all. Despite the unbearably freezing temperatures, Anakin was burning. The dark side, after decades of festering inside of him, begging to be unleashed, has finally been let free. Anakin's eyes were a fiery yellow color. He was surrounded by the slaughtered bodies of the Separatist leadership. Gunray, Tambor, Poggle, they were all dead in this base. Anakin didn't know the history of the base. He didn't care that it was a small base from the times of the Old Republic, discovered by Palpatine during the Clone Wars. Initially, Sidious had planned to use Mustafar as the final resting place for the Separatists, and the place where the droids would be shut down. But Mustafar had become exposed during the war. Anakin and Ahsoka went there during a mission to track down Cad Bane and Force-sensitive children. Sidious had opted to change course, and he chose a planet that could not be more opposite to Mustafar. The Hoth base was reinforced with thick Durasteel walls. It had a long overlook balcony, stretching across the entire square base. It was surrounded by nearby mountains, and in order to get to those nearby mountains, you had to cross a safe but still rickety bridge overlooking a seemingly endless ravine below. The bridge was only safe to cross during the day when the winds were at their lowest, and it was completely off limits during a snowstorm. The natives here were the dreaded Wampas and Tauntauns, no true civilized life, and as Anakin looked out into the snowy world, a tear rolled down his cheek, freezing to his face. He didn't understand why he was crying. This was what he wanted. He could feel his power growing. He knew, as soon as Sidious shared with him the secrets of Plagueis, that he would meet an end, much like Plagueis did. Everything was working according to plan, from the moment he cut down Windu, and yet, he couldn't shake a certain feeling, like a cold, slimy ooze, slithering in his veins, almost as though he were still afraid. A voice in his head, the voice of the darkness that has always lived in him, whispered that she will die, and he knows it. Vader shook it off. It was impossible. He is Darth Vader. Fear has no power over him. He has conquered his fear. But the voice spoke again, whispering to him that all things die, even stars burn out. Vader tried to shake away this dragon inside of him, and before long, the calm world of Hoth would begin to see a snowstorm beginning to emerge. The daylight was running out. The winds were picking up by quite a lot. Heavy snow was falling from the sky. And then, the console nearby began to beep rapidly as a ship was emerging into the world. Padme Amidala would land in a clearing next to Anakin's ship. She was dressed in a heavy white and blue fur coat, with boots up to her knees, fully covered, ready for the snow. She looked through the heavy falling snow to see Anakin running from the base entrance towards her, so she got out of the ship, running for him as well. And from deep inside of the ship, Obi Wan Kenobi waited inside of the cargo hold until he was sure that Padme was outside. He could feel the cold air of Hoth pressing against the ship walls. If he had any humor left, he might have cursed the Sith for choosing such a wretched world. But instead, he prepared himself for the worst fight of his life. Outside of the ship, Anakin and Padme's argument was soon coming to a terrible end. Anakin was beginning to see that Padme was not on his side, despite everything he'd done. He was doing it all for her. Anakin couldn't understand why Padme wasn't seeing the truth. And from Padme's point of view, Anakin has gone insane. His eyes were their usual color, but there was something behind them, something dark, dangerous, and it was like Anakin had become someone else entirely. And then, Anakin saw Obi Wan. With the wind and snow whipping into his face, Anakin still felt white hot. He reached out, grabbing Padme in a force choke, enraged that she was with him. Obi-Wan yelled down to her to let her go, and so he did. She fell into a forming snow pile, and before going down the ramp, Obi-Wan yelled at the droids to get her in here as quickly as they can, once the area is clear. And then Obi-Wan went down the ramp, and the two of them began to circle each other. Luckily enough, Force users could embrace the Force, keeping their bodies warm enough to survive for a time, and the adrenaline was definitely rising in both of them. Anakin yelled to Obi-Wan, telling him he'll give him a chance, for old time's sake. Walk away. Go someplace out of the way. Retire. meditate. He doesn't have to fight for peace anymore. Peace is here. His empire is peace. Obi-Wan shook his head, saying he wishes that were so, but his empire will never have peace. It was founded on treachery and innocent blood. But Anakin told Obi-Wan then that he's not with him, then he is against him. Blue plasma would light up from the sleeves of both of them, and Anakin flew in. Anakin's momentum would send Obi-Wan skidding backwards as their blades collided against the icy ground, giving way to embrace his defensive style. The wind was tearing at their cloaks, biting at any exposed skin, the cold so vicious that only the Force was keeping their bodies from seizing up. They have kept their top robes on for now, but both of them were fighting warmth, as the Force was with them, light and dark. Obi-Wan tried to plant himself in the ground, but Anakin's kick hit him in the chest, forcing him through the blizzard. Obi-Wan flipped backwards through the open entrance of the base. There was no time to recover. Anakin was right on him, bursting through the door, swinging hard against Kenobi. Their blades were locked together. Obi-Wan twisted them as they hit a console panel, sparks bursting out, sabers colliding through the orange shower of it. Every strike was harsher in the cold metal chamber. The echoes of it were compounding, blending in with the sounds of the wind outside. Obi-Wan ducked under a heavy slash, countering with a shove of the Force that knocked Anakin across a row of crates. But Anakin just rose, shaking off the impact as if it were just a tiny shove. Obi-Wan retreated deeper into the corridor, using the Force to crush the ceiling lights, making it so only their blades lit a smaller room. It barely helped. Anakin's blade swung dangerously close to Obi-Wan's face, forcing him back, step by step, until his back hit a sealed exit door. Anakin pressed in, and Obi-Wan twisted away just in time, as Anakin drove forward with a brutal stab of his blade, crushing the door controls. The metal lock snapped open, and Anakin unleashed a Force push as Obi-Wan was hurled through the doorway, out onto the balcony ring. He hit the railing hard, snow and wind once again lashing across his face, as Anakin stepped through the broken doorway, and both of them stared at each other once more, finally removing their top robes. Anakin moved back in, swinging hard with a hot fury, cutting through the blizzard. Obi-Wan continued to give ground, barely staying alive, waiting for his opening. Soon, they got to the corner of the balcony, where it curved around the base, and their sabers locked hard against each other once more. Obi-Wan would dig his heels in, but the bridge behind him would bend and groan under the pressure, as his back was now pressed against it. Anakin leaned his whole weight forward, rage overriding the cold, and slowly, Obi-Wan's blade was driven towards his face, the heat cutting through the freezing air just shy of his skin. The railing bent outward with a shriek. Obi-Wan's back arched over it, an endless ravine below him. In a desperate moment, Obi-Wan would drop low, twisting under Anakin's locked blade, as Anakin stumbled forward, balance slipping on the slick metal. Before he could recover, Obi-Wan drove a powerful palm strike into Anakin's back, sending him over the edge of the railing. Anakin fell backward into the white abyss, as the blizzard would swallow him in seconds. The only sound left was the wind, as Obi-Wan was breathing heavily. He jumped down over the railing, using the Force to land softly on the slanted snow overlooking the ravine. He couldn't see the bottom. He couldn't see Anakin. So he lowered his head, muttering, "Goodbye, old friend." But the Force then whispered a warning. Obi-Wan saw a blue blade reignite as Anakin was hanging from a jagged rock, using the Force to pull himself, flying upwards through the air. He landed behind Obi-Wan, swinging for his waist to try and cut him in half, in that mere moment of surprise. But Obi-Wan was familiar with the move. He blocked that quick strike. Anakin had the high ground, though, on this slope of snow, threatening to fall away into the ravine. Obi-Wan took a tiny moment to glance behind him towards the rope bridge that was crossing across the ravine. It was not to be used during snowstorms, but there was nowhere else to go. Obi-Wan jumped through the snowy, windy air, landing on the bridge as it swayed around, threatening to break apart at any moment from his weight and the storm. Anakin followed. Of course he did. They would collide again instantly, blades sparking against each other, creating bright blue arcs as the Hoth sun was beginning to set, making the world somehow even colder. Every step they took was making the bridge creak and snap beneath them. Planks began to splinter and fall away as their sabers slashed down, chunks of wood tumbling into the abyss. The rope strained and groaned on both sides, swaying dangerously as the storm threatened it. Anakin pressed his attack, frustrated at Kenobi's refusal to die. driving him backward towards a gap where the planks had already fallen through. And as Obi-Wan was distracted with Anakin's blade, a sharp kick to the face sent Obi-Wan slipping through a hole in the bridge. For a heartbeat, he was weightless, flailing, but his hand shot out, gripping the rope just in time. Obi-Wan swung under the bridge, snow blasting into his face, but he used the momentum to flip upward, landing behind Anakin with a burst that rattled the entire bridge. Anakin wheeled around, and their blades clashed again, but the bridge has had enough. With a loud crack, the ropes anchoring the bay side of the bridge would suddenly snap entirely. The entire bridge swung downward like a pendulum, slamming against the opposite cliff face with bone-rattling force. Snow and ice blasted loose from the impact, crashing over both of them as they cling to the ropes now turned into vertical climbing lines. The bridge hangs above the abyss. Obi-Wan was higher, Anakin lower, and as they were climbing up, Anakin swung upward with vicious, stabbing strikes. Obi-Wan deflected them one-handed while reaching upward with the other. Their blades flashed inches from each other's bodies, melting the snow around them. Finally, Obi-Wan has the room to haul himself up onto stable footing. Anakin would reach for his ankle, but Obi-Wan kicked free, scrambling upwards. He was completely exhausted by now. He couldn't feel his fingers or his feet. Every breath felt like his lungs were scraping against ice. His eyes felt like they were going to freeze open. But as he glanced around, he saw a cave opening. Obi-Wan got to his feet, hauling himself towards the cave. But Anakin climbed up, and he reached out his hand. He slammed Kenobi into the snow, pulling him back towards him. Anakin's body was also reacting the same way, but he was hiding all of the pain and the cold with his pure hatred and anger. He pulled Kenobi right to him, then slammed his blade down for the kill. Of course, Obi-Wan blocked it, and he grabbed Anakin's arm, pulling himself up as they both stared at each other, wrestling with their flailing limbs. Both of them pushed each other away, and in a move of pure exhaustion and desperation, they both reached their hands out in a forced push, meant to push the other over the edge. Their faces strained, they both screamed out, and they were equals after countless hours of training, fighting, and living together. Their hands would finally touch, and the force exploded outward out of them, as they both went flying backwards. The explosion of the force caused a huge pulsing wave of it to spread outward, slamming into the mountain next to them. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan would crash into the snow, far from each other, but Obi-Wan found himself near the cave entrance, as Anakin found himself back on the sloping edge towards the cliff. And then, a terribly loud rumbling filled their ears. The force pulse hit the mountain. The snow was beginning to fall from it. An avalanche of seismic proportions was beginning. Obi-Wan used everything he had left, running towards the cave opening. The beginnings of the collapse were hitting him, icy blocks of snow slamming into his face and chest, and he was finally able to dive into the cave opening. He scrambled around, looking out into Hoth, as the avalanche was beginning to close the cave entrance. In the distance, Anakin was sprinting against the current, both hands reaching out to try and disperse the snow. It was building up around him, flowing as high as his ankles, then up to his knees, his waist, and Anakin was barely trudging through the snow, barely moving forward. He looked into the cave, and he locked eyes with Obi-Wan. For the first time on Hoth, Obi-Wan saw real emotion behind them, emotion of fear, regret, sorrow, and realization, and Anakin used every ounce of his strength, diving forward for the entrance. But he was swallowed up in the snow, as the avalanche would reach its full strength, sealing the entrance. Everything went quiet. Obi-Wan fell to his knees, but astonishingly, a single gloved finger would poke through the snow into the cave entrance. It was haunting. He couldn't escape. Obi-Wan had hoped the end would come naturally. Anakin would be swept away in the snow to never be seen again. But of course, it could never be so easy. Obi-Wan would plunge his saber into the snow around Anakin, melting it, and finally, he was able to pull Anakin's frozen body out of it. He was unconscious, but breathing, and Obi-Wan lifted his blade, preparing to end this. His hand was shaking, tears were forming, and Obi-Wan again fell to his knees, throwing his lightsaber away. He would not and could not kill an unarmed man, and so he would instead find old, frozen roots of a plant that was once alive in these caves. He would take parts of his robe, and he would create a small fire, placing Anakin near it. When Anakin eventually woke up, he found himself shivering, but the nearby fire felt nicer than anything ever before. He remembered the avalanche, the fight, the desperate dive for safety, and as he looked around, he finally found Obi Wan, poking at the fire, trying to keep it maintained for as long as possible. They didn't make eye contact. Obi Wan couldn't bring himself to do it. But he spoke first, telling Anakin his comlink did still work from in here, and before Anakin woke up, Obi Wan said that he spoke with Padme. The droids had gotten her safely onto the ship, but Padme revealed to Obi Wan that a new ship has just entered the atmosphere, and he can only assume it is the Emperor. And Obi Wan revealed that he told Padme to rest, have R2 fly out of here. Anakin knew it was Sidious. He could feel his dark presence. And then he asked Obi Wan why he was still alive. He could have killed him easily. Obi Wan just shook his head, admitting he wasn't completely sure why he didn't end it. A part of him, perhaps nothing more than a voice of an old friend and mentor, thinks that Anakin's story is not yet complete. Perhaps his destiny is not yet fulfilled. Obi-Wan was also aware of another fact. There's no way out of this cave, except for the blocked entrance. They were running out of air, and it was only a matter of time before Sidious finds his way in here and kills him, bringing Anakin back to rule the Empire. Unless Anakin makes the choice to come back. Anakin's mind was swirling with conflict. But then, from the back of the cave, a blue ghost would begin to form as Qui-Gon Jinn began to emerge. Neither of them were sure it was real, but Qui-Gon would affirm Obi-Wan's words, telling Anakin that despite everything, he is the Chosen One. And before long, outside of the cave, Darth Sidious stood in his shuttle, looking down to the snowy ground, as 6 flame troopers began to unleash their flamethrowers on the snow, trying to clear a path to the cave entrance. Sidious could feel Vader's presence. He was alive, but weakened, and he was not alone. In the cave, Anakin and Obi-Wan would soon hear the flamethrowers. They could feel the warmth of it. The snow was giving way. Obi-Wan told Anakin that he knows where Padme is going. He can bring him to her, and he will be there when she gives birth. But first, he must choose the light. He must see through the lies of the Sith. Sidious will not protect Padme, but they can. And finally, Anakin would accept the truth. And so, as the final walls of snow would clear, the flame troopers would peer inside of the cave, only to suddenly be thrown from their feet, screaming as they flailed over the edge of the ravine, falling to their deaths from a force push. The 2 Jedi stepped out, blades ignited, the force flowing through them, and they looked up to Sidious's shuttle. The snowstorm had finally ended. There was a calm feeling in the air, and in the shuttle, Sidious accepted this betrayal. He ordered the clones to fire at both of them, show no mercy. The shuttle began firing down at the Jedi, and they got to work. Obi-Wan took the defensive, standing in front of Anakin, using the Force and his lightsaber to redirect every blast, absorbing them, limiting the damage. And Anakin reached up, grabbing the shuttle with the Force, gripping it, trying to crush the engines. And as soon as Sidious realized what was happening, he ordered the clones to keep firing, but opened the ramp. Sidious would step out to the lowering ramp and blast lightning down at the Jedi. It pierced through the shuttle cannon fire, hitting Obi-Wan's blade as he had to change his focus. Anakin let go of the shuttle, helping with the defense, and the lightning would only get stronger out of Sidious's hands. Finally, a cannon blast would get through the defenses, slamming into the ground right in front of the Jedi. They were both thrown to the ground, and Sidious had the shuttle get closer to the ground as he reached out, grabbing both Jedi in a force choke. He was draining the life out of them, taking his time. As the darkness was closing in on Skywalker and Kenobi, they would see a flash of silver suddenly pierce the clouds, and hope would be restored in them. Padme has returned. Sidious was too focused on the Jedi to see what was happening until it was too late. Padme fired right at the shuttle. The blasts from it slammed right into the shuttle. It erupted in a ball of flame, crashing down towards the ravine, and Sidious was caught in the middle of the blast. His screams of surprise, anger, and pain were drowned in the explosions as the shuttle descended into the ravine, slamming into the cliff wall and being sent down to a terrible end. Anakin and Obi-Wan would get to the edge, seeing the fiery shuttle disappear before a final crash could be heard. Padme would soon land her ship, saying that something called her back to Hoth, like a voice speaking to her from another realm, almost as if she could feel the Force through the children. Anakin and Obi-Wan knew the truth, Qui-Gon, and they would both climb aboard the ship as it rose up, with Padme beginning her contractions, she was quickly going to be giving birth. Deep in the abyss here on Hoth, though, Darth Sidious would not die from the crash, but he would be unconscious as a clan of Wampas found the fiery shuttle. These Wampas lived down here in this deep cave, and Sidious would wish that he died in the crash, as he and the clones were the next meal for the Wampa clan. Obi-Wan would have C-3PO pilot the ship to Polis Massa. He, Anakin, and Padme were all on the verge of collapse from the cold and from giving birth, and when they landed on Polis Massa, Yoda and Bail Organa would bring all three of them into the medical facility. Anakin and Obi-Wan were placed into healing tanks, while Padme would give birth. When Anakin eventually woke up, he was out of the tank, handcuffed in a ray shield room. Padme would soon come to him, alongside Yoda and an injured Obi-Wan, and Padme had a pod with twin babies inside of it. And this broke whatever was left of Anakin. Everything he did, the murder, the darkness, it was all for nothing. Padme lived with the help of the Jedi, not the Sith. And today would be the day where Anakin was forced to say goodbye to everyone. Yoda and Bail decided that Anakin could go off into the Outer Rim, restart a new life, retire, meditate. It was payment for helping defeat the Emperor in the end. But if they ever see him again, if he's ever heard from, he will be treated as a top priority criminal. They told him to go live his life, make the galaxy better, knowing his family was out in the galaxy. And so, Anakin would go, venturing into the Outer Rim, living his new life, trying to move on. But it was not easy, and yet he would do it for his family. And for the remainder of his time, Anakin worked as a mercenary, taking out Outer Rim criminals that he would have hated as a child. And every night, Anakin would settle in at a cantina. He would watch the Republic HoloNet. He would watch as the Jedi and the Republic evolved and grew over the years. Padme and Obi-Wan were among the most mentioned people all the time, and although Anakin could never see them again, he knew his family and old friends were restoring the galaxy with the Jedi and the Republic working together without him. And folks, that is our story for today. One that I enjoyed, and if you're in the United States of America, the weather, the cold weather is spreading around, the snowstorm, so I thought, hey, let's go to Hoth, and how can we do it? Well, this was a fun video idea that I actually really enjoyed, and the thought of it was, I still wanted to take the fight on Mustafar, and I still wanted to make it, drawn out, long, not just a fight on the ground and one of them wins, but no, take him to a base, take him to a balcony, a rope bridge over a ravine, a cave, an avalanche, do it all. Thought of including Wampas in the fight, but saved that for Sidious, which I thought was a funny end for him. Funny, deserved. Anyways, yeah, I like this. I'm thinking maybe if I'll even do like Tatooine, Camino, and just embrace different ways that a fight like this could have gone. But yeah, let me know what you thought overall. I had a lot of fun with this. I hope you did as well. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and see you in the next video.